20, like,
Yeah.
definitely no more highway. Okay.
So before we get started, we fill out the website, we fill out the consultation form, we start recording consultations, training sessions, and then sessions, okay?
Which actually I really liked, because I made a huge mistake signing
Oh,
over.
I saw, I think, yeah.
We went to sit means sit, and they gave me such a hard time about like, because I like visuals
Sure.
and stuff, so I normally videotape everything
Oh, sure.
anyway.
Uh-huh.
And they were just kind of like, oh, baby, like, no. They didn't really like were comfortable with me filming
Oh, sure.
like anything, which
Yeah.
was
I don't care. If you ever want to film stuff here, I mean, so we film this, we put it up so people have a reference point.
yeah,
For themselves.
exactly. I use it for reference, and then like because I mainly do all of her training
Mhm.
and stuff, but like I live with my parents and my brother,
Mm-hmm.
so whatever I learn, they have to learn.
Sure.
So kind
Yeah,
of
and you can relay the information.
me explaining like something like 40 times
Sure.
it gets kind of
Yeah, I mean,
annoying.
if you move forward and everything,
Mhm.
I don't care if you record. I'm super transparent with people. So yeah, so don't worry about that. But I'm familiar with them.
Mhm.
I actually have I've had I have someone coming later,
Mhm.
and then someone that I was talked about like a week ago that worked with them.
Yeah.
And actually, no, I have 3 others.
And it's just, I feel horrible, like absolutely like horrible, because I found her
Mhm.
and she was like the sweetest dog ever,
Mhm.
super friendly. Like, I personally didn't like it, but my parents used to like have her just walk up to dogs, she could say hello, and then she would go on her merry way.
Mhm.
And then, like a month into having her, my neighbor was like, oh, let's introduce her to my dogs.
Mhm.
And like, he always bragged about like how he has like, I hate people who are like, my purebred, like golden
Sure.
retriever, like
Mhm.
can't do no wrong, no nothing. And I was like really iffy about it, and because his dog's really aggressive towards people.
Mhm.
But I was like, he likes other dogs, so I thought it would be fine.
Mhm.
And then we introduced them through a fence,
Mhm.
and he bit her face
Mhm.
pretty bad.
Mhm.
And then it was just kind of like, oh shit. And then she she was fine after, but then kind of like on walks, she got like kind of
Mhm.
standoffish, and she didn't start really like being outside as much as she used to.
Mhm.
So then I was like, okay, so I was like, I need somebody to help me understand like how to help her be more comfortable.
Mhm.
And then at the time, a friend of mine who I was working with was like, oh, like, my friend owns like a sit means sit. She's like, and she used to work in the animal control in Chicago, and she's like, we sell people to go to them like all the time, and like, they're fantastic.
Mhm.
So I just called the number and I was like, okay, like, someone told me like they're fantastic, and she has like beautifully trained dogs, but
Mhm.
I should have asked her like what kind of training they were, and then she was like, oh, we don't necessarily just train them, they just know. So I was like, oh, so you have a cookie cutter
Mhm.
like dog, basically.
Mhm.
So it was just kind of like, mine's like a rescue, and then like, she gave me shit for that, so I was like, whatever.
For her being a rescue?
Yeah, she was just like, oh, if you actually went to like a breeder, and I was like, well, no, not necessarily. I was like, I found her, and
It kind of doesn't make sense if animal control or whatever is sending her a bunch of dogs, and then she's like, oh, shame on you for getting your dog.
yeah, and it was just a weird, I don't talk to her.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's just,
talking about the one right here, right? They're on.
actually, yeah, they're like right
Yeah,
there.
across from the park.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about.
I would go there, and like we did 4 private lessons, and then he was like, oh yeah, she's like, she's fantastic, she can be in group classes. And I was like, okay. And then the group class we went to made me insanely uncomfortable, because like definitely could tell, like, and I didn't think she was ready either to be in a group class, like especially with how she reacts to other dogs.
Mhm.
But if I thought she was bad, the other dog that they had us in class with was insane. Like, he was muzzled up, like collar vest, like, so you could yank him back 4 times her size. And like, if you got too close, he would growl at me, but then like, fixate, like, And I've been around aggressive dogs, because I have a friend who, in the country, she rehabilitates
Mhm.
insanely aggressive dogs. And this thing was probably like, I don't know what the terminology is for it, but whatever happened to him, I was so sad. And it was just so uncomfortable. And then I was like, why? Or like, she's not ready for a group class, obviously, but like the fact that they had this dog in a group class kind of like blew my mind. And then it made her uncomfortable, like the whole time she was in class, and then I was like...
Was the dog acting out?
Oh yeah, like he was like, he had like 2-foot leashes on him, and he was like holding one on the harness and one on his neck the whole time. And then I was just kind of like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this?
How many group classes did you do?
We did 2, and then they went into complete shutdown, and then they didn't do like any type of classes like whatsoever.
Oh, because of COVID or whatever?
Because of COVID, and then I was like, I sent them an email about, I was like, can like we do like, you know, any type of like video? I was like, I understand, like, you know, but I was like, you know, if my job's closed, I kind of really wanted to work on her, like intensely to like help her, because she just gets like kind of like uncomfortable like in certain situations, and dogs are just kind of like, she's fine with dogs in buildings. It's just the minute we're outside, it's like, no.
The dog that bit her in the nose, what kind of dog was it?
A golden retriever.
Okay, so it's a golden.
It was like, he's gorgeous dog, and he's like super sweet because I grew up with him, but just so not friendly. And I should have known, but then I was like, no, it's my neighbor, like, you know, he wouldn't do that. And then he, you know, blamed it on us because, you know, obviously she's the dangerous breed, but I was like, your dog's the one that tried to rip her face open. And then it was just kind of...
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. I actually have a similar story from another client from many years ago. A young, like 12-year-old boy, this was out like in the suburbs, was walking his golden, and the dog became reactive, and they had a bulldog kind of hula mix. And so the dog got off leash and was being reactive, ran towards their dog, attacked her. She bit the dog in self-defense, and then they were able to break it up. And then when the authorities were called, of course, their dog got all the blame because it was golden.
It was just...
So it's crazy and it's unfortunate.
And I'm like, and I hate saying this, but I was like, I won't let... I'm working very hard on her so people aren't just like, oh, she's a pit bull, like that's what... Like, no, she's so sweet, so well behaved inside the house. It's just now all of a sudden she's so uncomfortable just outside. It makes me sad. And we try to bring her everywhere. Like we want her to come with us like everywhere. Like eventually, like if I can work hard towards it, maybe like have her be like some type of emotional support animal. Because she loves people, and like, you know, when we had my great grandmother around, she loved her, and I was like, oh, if we could have brought her to the nursing home, that would have been fantastic. And so it was just, and she's such a sweetheart, and like, you know, she's my first dog, so I'm just kind of...
Gotcha. So I read a few consultations today. Am I like, getting her confused with a different dog here? Because okay, that's territorial behavior. Okay.
I was gonna say her only problem is like dogs and then like certain men.
In the home.
Yeah, so it's usually like outside, she doesn't mind like anybody. She doesn't like it when they get too close, especially with the whole like face mask thing. She doesn't like it if she can't see her face, and she doesn't like it when you run up on her too fast, but that's normal. Like, you know, I feel like you shouldn't run up to like somebody with a dog anyway, because you know, I get startled, so obviously she should get startled.
That is correct.
But she typically is just like super tall men with facial hair is kind of like her main triggers and stuff, because we have like friends who come over to the house all the time, and like, you know, she does the whole like, she pretends to be scary, but then like, you know, we have her like put away for a bit, and then she'll come out and then she's like, oh my god, welcome, like, you know, we'll be out for a walk and then people will get into the house, and then, you know, she comes in and then she's like, oh, welcome home, like, you know, like you've been there forever. It's just the initial like greeting then. She just can't.
When someone knocks, she should bark.
Like, and but we don't have a doorbell, so it's just like, you know, she knocks. It's kind of, we like her when she barks, because then we know someone's actually there. So we haven't exactly like corrected her barking at knocking. It's just because we got her, our whole house was being redone, and then so whenever she barks at somebody knocking, it's kind of like, oh, someone's here, like, thanks. So we kind of reward it, which is probably not the best, but it's just...
Yeah, so a few things here would be the reactivity that you're seeing now, most likely because of the bite. It's created distrust.
Yeah.
Dogs, it's funny because like they don't generalize like obedience, like sit at home is sit at the store is sit at the park, right? You have to work in a lot of different contexts before they generalize sit means sit no matter where you go. But when it comes to negative experience, one kind of traumatizing, limited negative experience, and then they generalize, right? So then it's like, oh, I got the defense by another dog. Now I don't trust dogs.
Exactly. And she used to be, like I said, insanely friendly. Like, we found her and she was like 20 pounds underweight, and I was like, and she's covered in scars, so we don't know exactly what her home situation was, but I thought it was like, it would be fine, because like, she was friendly, like when she would meet other people and like other dogs, so I was like, I thought I was gonna bring home like, and we have cats, so I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna kill my cats, like bringing her into the house. No, she loves the cats. They hate her, but she loves them. And she's like so well behaved. It's insane. She didn't know any commands when we first got her. But other people we've talked to think that she was just kept in a basement and kind of was like outside, pee, poop, and then back inside. So it's just kind of, we don't know, but then there's like certain things that trigger her, like, but it was really good the first like couple months we had her, and then all of a sudden it just got worse and worse and worse. And now she's like to the point where she's like insane outside, and I walk her and my dad walks her, and he has vertigo, which is like if he tilts his head wrong, he faints and stuff. So with the ice outside and then him walking her, it's kind of like, you don't want him to like have to look down at her and then him fall. So it's kind of like, I have to like hit this kind of like in the butt. And then I also don't want to wait, and then I get worse. And then,
so when you had her for those couple of months, it was the incident, then reactivity, is that correct? Okay.
Because she would see other dogs and she'd be like, a friend, but then like, she'd be like, okay, cool, now we're gonna continue. And we don't do like, it's not like she's inside, like all the time. We do, when we first got her, it was we would go, like, if we were bored, it was an hour-long walk, like, she went to like 3 to 4 like hour-long walks a day. Now not so much, but we do like do an hour, hour and a half, like every chance we get. With the weather, it's like, we'll do 30 minutes here or there, 30 minutes here and there. So it's not like, she wasn't, like, we weren't not exposing her. And we're like in a heavily populated area, especially like dogs in general. So it was just kind of like, it was really sad seeing her like go from like happy-go-lucky, like wanting to make friends, and then all of a sudden she's like, a dog's like 100 feet in front of her, and then she like loses her mind. Like, it's not even like you like can snap her out of it. But like, we'll go into like Petco and she'll see like a dog and she's like, okay, cool, that's fine. And then we can keep going. Unless like, she'll see like definitely like an aggressive looking dog. If like a dog's barking and lunging at her, then she freaks out, but I feel like that's every dog. So it's just kind of like, that's the only time she'll ever like react to something, when we're in a building. But other than that, she's like, okay, like fine, we're here, chill, like when we're out and about. But outside is like a worse.
That makes sense. Now I see she's on a harness, but you have her on a slip.
Oh, the harness, she gets seatbelted in the car, so that's her seatbelt.
That's her seatbelt.
Kind of thing.
But you can use the slip for her walking.
So we use the slip now, because her neck's healing. We went for a walk when it was like -2, and I think the prong collar, we normally had a bad reaction.
I saw here, it's near.
I think because it was just too cold, it kind of like messed with her neck a bit, and her neck's super sensitive too, because she gets hot spots there in the summer and everything. So her neck's kind of like, we're very careful like with it, because she just, it's the one area that like everything just seems to.
No, it's funny because we just had a board and train come through, very similar, fur pattern, except she's she's taller and more lean, but her neck was ridiculously sensitive. So
it's just, I think because of just how cold it was, like for a couple days, and every time we took her for a walk, because the minute she's out of the house, she's on the prong collar. And so it's the only way you can walk her. If she's not wearing it, she'll be dragging you down the street. Like, you can't do a harness on her.
Yeah.
I actually brought it with me. This is what we like.
Yeah.
Her normal, like the hamstringer. We'll walk around this. See, now she thinks she's gonna go for a walk.
So prior, at least prior to the cold, she was wearing her prong, no problem. Okay.
No problem. Introduced like pressure and all that, but it's just usually like whenever just other dogs, the minute they're in the picture, she doesn't care about and then the sit people did the whole
E-collar?
E-collar.
Did you use the sitting sit collar?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't like it, and it was just, I understand the idea of like the e-collar, and I was all for it, because when we first got her, I bought an e-collar, because I was like, okay, when she's more comfortable with us, we'll do like off-leash like training and everything, so, because my cousins have a farm, and I want her to be able to go out and explore, so I was like, when she's ready, I was like, we'll do like e-collar training and like all this stuff, and so, but then it's just like a whole bunch of stuff happened, and then got signed up for their class, and then they told me that their collar was 10 times better than what I was doing, but then they were like, but them explaining it, it was just like, you're having me constantly shock my dog. And it's just like, I don't like the collars, and it's a collar, it only goes up to 7. And I was like, well, what do you do if like 7 doesn't work? And it's just, but then I went to another trainer to do a consultation, and he was the first trainer that had me put the collar on, but we didn't end up going to him because he didn't like my reactions. I guess I didn't react enough for him. So he, instead of just doing like, you know, up to like 30, he put the collar all the way up to 100 and like shocked me. And then he was like, oh, haha, finally got a reaction out of you. And I was like, sir, I was like, I know what it feels like. I was like, you didn't have to.
Yeah, max it out.
And it's just, ugh.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry you had that.
It's very hard finding somebody.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of explain everything here. I'm super transparent. I don't sugarcoat stuff because it just misleads you.
Yeah. I need someone who's going to tell me you fucked up. Because, like, I've never had a dog before. I've been around other people who've had dogs before. So growing up with other people's dogs was fine. Never thought I was going to own a dog, but, you know, shit.
Sure.
And stuff, but I've always wanted a dog, so then she came into the picture, and I need someone to teach me how to have a dog, and then
correct
how to handle these situations.
Right. So I won't tell you that you fucked up, okay?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't help you. What I will do is bring out things that you're doing or not doing that are not helping the situation. Because if I'm judging you, I can't help you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I will be transparent and I will call you out and stuff. But I've learned, and I'm just not that person either, but obviously with your experience with those, you know, 2 other trainers, and I've heard other ones, people getting ghosted, people paying $1,000.
Oh yeah, and they were like, you have to pay, like, this is like, and they were like paying full, so then I was like, I feel like I was gypped out of my money.
Yeah. And
all that stuff. And then we've done like, I talked to like a positive trainer, and she was just kind of like, oh, like, yeah, you know, you just like, you know, hand her a treat. And I was like, that was okay when we were having her put on weight, but I was like, I don't want to, like, you know, she gets fed like she only gets fed like 2 cups a day. But then I was like, no treats like on top of that. And then when I brought up the idea of like, you know, hand feeding, she was just kind of like, oh, but then you're taking away the structure of meal times. And I was like,
it's simpler than you think it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that right now. It's simpler than you think it is. And I just posted, I'm not sure if you follow us on our Instagram.
I do. Actually, that's how I found out about you. I follow, I think her name's Maddie on TikTok.
Sure.
And she posted a video in a place that I recognize, and I was like, oh, are you visiting Chicago? And she's like, no, I work in Chicago. And I was like, fucking sign me up. Because her content was like, and especially because she has so many like food allergies, her stuff was really helpful with like getting her like, you know, bone broths and like, you know, the turmeric paste stuff to add to her food to help her with her skin issues and stuff. So I was like, and it took me a while, but I was like, obviously these guys know what they're talking about.
I like to think so, yeah. But, you know, I think it was just a day or 2 ago where I posted, you know, dog trainers are making it too complicated for their clients. and it either dissuades them from doing the training. They feel like they're being judged, and then they're being bashed. Which somebody had commented on my post saying like, yeah, like my trainer like would talk crap to me.
Yeah.
Like who does that? Like you don't talk
crap. And I
crap
know
to
she's never gonna be like perfect. Like I don't want her like trying to like demand.
Yeah, you just need a standard family pet and to behave.
She's not like your dog. Like let's say it would be perfect for a business because you have to use them for.
That is correct.
And you put your own personal dogs in technically what's considered a dangerous situation. Because while she's calm right now, she's normally not calm.
Correct.
So I would feel bad, but it's just.
Yeah, no, unfortunately some people shouldn't be trainers, but it is what it is.
Also, I was kind of really glad that you guys didn't have Belgian Malinois all over your.
Yeah. Well, the thing about
I understand that they're a good working dog, but it's just like.
It's not the average family pet.
No.
What people don't understand too is a lot of trainers that are out there that come from a franchise, they buy their dogs.
Yeah.
And they come like pre-trained a lot of times.
Yeah.
So it's like it's all been done. So anyways, yeah, I care more about behavioral stuff than the standard family pet. That's my niche.
Yeah, because there was like the amount of times I walked into a place and like everyone has like their pack of Belgian Malinois. I was like, I get it, like it's the ultimate like proof that you're a good trainer if you can control Belgium. But it's just she's a high, like of course considered like a high like guard dog, or I don't know what the term is, like an aggressive breed, people like difficult dogs, but it's just she's calm, she's sweet. She's not hyperactive like most other dogs.
No, she's just a family pet.
Yeah, it's just I don't need her to be perfect. I just need her to walk okay and then come when she needs to.
Sure. Yeah. Just the.
That's kind of like all. Because like other than that, she just needs to live a happy, healthy life. Because she's just there for me.
Sure. So, with all the stuff that you've told me, the reactivity most likely a result of the dog bite. You're not the first person, you're not going to be the last person, so don't feel bad about that.
Yeah.
It is what it is, it happened already, she's not thinking about it, she's not reflecting, right now she's like, oh no, my God.
What I try to strive for is like, she doesn't remember it, I mean, obviously she does, but it's just like, it's done and over with.
Yeah, it's not like she remembers the incident itself, like you can, like, you can keep going back to it. She doesn't. She's just it's just changed something about her as a result, okay? And again, it's not uncommon. I see it all the time. Typically when people come to me and I'll ask them stuff trying to figure out where is it coming from. 6 months in a year are very common ages where a puppy or dog will have a negative experience around 6 months or a year, and then it leads to something after that, okay? And it can happen later, it can happen at any point in life.
And when I found her, she was a year and a half old, at least I think. And then we had her for a year, so she's technically like around 3 now. But when we first got her, she was technically considered a puppy, still being a year and a half, because the shelter told us that. No.
In my opinion, a year they're an adult.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were like until they're 2.5 years old, she's like they're still considered a puppy, and I was like, okay.
I mean, maybe in my opinion, a year. Now at 2 years old is typically when your dog matures, and then you just have your dog. Okay. But again, anything can change.
Yeah.
Nature versus nurture type of thing. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about, the moment it happened, it is what it is. In regards to the behavior with people coming in or with men, that's normal.
Yeah.
It's territorial behavior. Like you said, it's a sort of a sense
But
of
she's
security.
completely fine with women. Like if she can see like a woman's face and like, she smells you, women's totally fine with. It's just men she's kind of like standoffish with. Because like when we first got her, she didn't really necessarily like my brother or my dad, but she absolutely loved me and my mom. Now she's fantastic with my brother and my dad, and then a bunch of my brother's friends and everything. Some of my friends she hasn't really met too much. But we tried exposing her to as many people as possible, but then like, 2 months after we got her, it was like COVID.
Yeah.
So then we couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah. So her being put off by men is not uncommon, because men tend to give a more threatening presence than women do. So, and when someone knocks and she triggers into territorial mode, and they enter and she sees it's a man, like there's just a lot of stress kind of
Yeah, she
Stacked together.
definitely like, and she has, so when we first brought her to the sit me and sit place, they were very like standoffish with her because I guess he thought like her hair was sticking up. She has like a cowlick going up the top of her head, so everyone just assumes all of her hair is standing up constantly and that she's upset.
No.
And I'm just like, no, like when she's upset, her hair here goes down.
I would say it's pretty thick.
Yeah, it's like the big, all of her back, all of
Yeah.
the hair stands up, not just like the nip of her neck. But he was like, oh, she's like really upset. And I was like, no, she's fine.
I mean, even just looking at it right now, I wouldn't think hackles, because hackles is typically a long, kind of 2 to 3 inch ridge that goes down the back. So, so with that, not out of the ordinary, if there's any real concern there, you would be telling me like she's bitten 3 people.
She's never bitten, and no, I should not say that. She's bitten me, but that was my fault. And it was the first week we had her, and I should have known better. Like I knew in my head, but I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna take it. So I took a tennis ball out of her mouth, and she was super excited, jumping up on me, and then she just kind of like, she grabbed onto my coat, and then just kind of like her tooth scratched me, so you can still kind of like see the scar.
Yeah.
But that was my fault. And she ripped the sleeve off my jacket, but I was like, definitely this is play. Like she thinks we're playing.
Yeah.
She's not attacking me, and like having to explain the difference to that, like to my parents was kind of like, they were like, oh, but no.
Yeah.
It was just that, so technically, like, you know, she did bite me, but it was my fault,
It wasn't
100%, like completely.
Yeah.
It wasn't really like bite, it was just, I had what she wanted.
Yeah,
and
no.
she went for it. Now she doesn't jump, like, I nip that in the butt. Well, at least with me, she doesn't. She knows not to get into my space when we're playing. I've tried to explain it to my family, how to do it. It's okay.
Yeah, that's going to be the hard part, is unfortunately you can't make them. And you can teach them all you want.
Yeah.
You can show them all the videos, but if they don't reinforce it.
My dad's just kind of like, she's a dog, she'll do whatever. He's like, I don't care. And I'm just like, no, you should care. He's like, she's a dog, she'll bark at people. And I'm just like, yes, I know, she'll bark at people. But you don't want her going after and scaring people when they walk into the house. Like, you know, she's too friendly of a dog to have her portrayed as like, you know, scary. Because she is like kind of like frightening at first, because like, you know, barking teeth, like, you know, she's kind of there. And you don't want her to scare people.
Right.
And in his head, he's like, she's a dog. It's kind of like, it's what she does.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
It's just the old school mentality.
yes.
But yeah, that's not out of the ordinary. It's normal. The other thing would be, it sounds like you have a bit of a nervous dog on your hands.
She's definitely nervous all the time. And I've done the whole like, everyone's like, oh, she's nervous because you're nervous. And I'm just like, I mean, I am anxious all the time, but I'm not to the point where she should be. Like, I'll be like, okay, there's a dog, we turn this way, but then the minute she smells a dog, I'm just like, I'm so over this. Because then it's like, because she's like, if a dog walks past the house and then she smells a dog, then she's kind of also triggered, because she's like, it's here. She's like, it was here. And then she kind of, I call it hunting. She like locks onto the smell and then she'll like search for them. And then that's how I know it's like an extreme like problem. I don't want her searching out other dogs when we're supposed to be like her time outside, exercise, like get out, and then let her do her stuff. So it's just
So for stuff like that, you know, you're on the right track in terms of like the tools that you're using and stuff. When I know you said something about they introduced pressure. Did they ever go over the heel command with you?
No, she doesn't know heel. It's kind of I just do like circles, like figure eights and stuff, and then we'll do that for a couple minutes, and then she knows that she has to stay by me. It's not necessarily like I tell her heel and she knows to go to like my right side. It's just kind of like she'll come and like she'll either around me like physically, or she's kind of like just, I'm here.
What did they cover with you in those classes?
Having her go from place to place to place.
With the prong collar and the e-collar?
Just the e-collar. They actually told me not to use the prong collar because they thought it was cruel.
That's interesting.
I didn't understand, because I thought a prong collar would be, in my head, less cruel than a shock collar, the e-collar that they were telling me that I constantly just press the button like all the time, different levels of it, and I was just like, but if she's not misbehaving, like why do I have to constantly?
I'll explain that to you, because I get where you're coming from, because we had somebody on one of our posts, we're not on one of our posts, but follows one of our clients, and I started commenting on it. So the concept of pressure, it's pressure on, pressure off. So I'm assuming you were remoting, and then as soon as she jumped on the bed, you would stop remoting. Okay, so you turn on the pressure, and then she's going, I don't like this, how do I turn this off? And you guide her with the leash, and once she does what we were wanting to do, which is to jump up, we take off that pressure. So then the dog starts to understand it as a line of communication. Okay, so I understand that part.
That's the part I do get, but it's just like, it was just, they were constantly telling me like, oh, even if she does do the behavior, that like, you still keep the collar going, but you just turn the pressure, like the voltage down. So they were just kind of like, you constantly just keep pressing, and then when she does what you want, turn it to like, oh, if you need her to do something, turn it to a 3, and then when she's done, turn it to a 1, but keep constantly like.
Oh, that's weird.
And it was just kind of like, I don't want to like, continuously do it. Like I understand like you do it so she gets what you want her to do, you reward the behavior.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense though.
Exactly.
Because, so here, the way we would do that is pressure on, and as soon as she completes it, pressure off. Like we don't dial it down, it's just you stop it completely. So that's weird. I know sit and sit, I don't follow them or anything, because they're just a franchise. Unless they change their methodology, that doesn't make sense, because e-collar is a negative, it's discomfort, and which makes it, that's why it's effective, is because no one wants to be in an uncomfortable situation. So if you find yourself uncomfortable, you're thinking, how do I get out of this, right? Same thing for the dog. So when you put that physical discomfort on them, and then they perform the task, we take that pressure off, and they go, oh, in order to turn this off, I just do this, and when I feel this, I do this, right?
Exactly, and that's like what I thought my mentality of it was, but they were like, oh no, you like keep constantly like, they were like, you have to let her know that you're constantly in her presence, and I'm just like, well, yeah, she knows that already.
That doesn't make sense, yeah. All right, well, the reason why I ask is, in order to address reactivity, the first thing you have to cover is the heel, which is leash walking, okay? I'm assuming you probably watched some of our videos on.
I've watched a couple of them.
Yeah.
You're fine.
So, the first thing we almost always teach is the heel command, because one of the most common things that people want to fix is pulling. Secondly, a lot of dogs we deal with are reactive, so that's also, we need a reference point for the dog. The theory here is, if she is locked onto your hip and she's focused on you, the rest of the world doesn't matter, okay? Now,
and she'll do that for food.
Yeah, no, we're gonna.
And that's the one thing I don't want her to constantly is like thinking she's constantly gonna get fed.
Right.
It's not.
Well, the other thing is, if she goes under stress,
food
doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. So we do this all through pressure. Okay, we use pressure to teach the dog how it turns on, how it turns off. The other thing is, a lot of dogs, when they feel e-collar, the first thing they want to do is run away. So because it makes them want to move, we use a moving command to teach them how it turns on and how it turns off. Okay, so it helps kind of pacify that need to move in response to the collar, but at the same time teach them something that we're going to need them to do, like walk at our side without tension. Now we teach a very focused type heel. If I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps, I take 3 steps, they take 3 steps, I take 1 step, they take 1 step. If I stop, they automatically sit.
And that's what she'll do.
With no tension, and I don't care what the environment is.
She'll sit with, you're fine. So she'll sit like if you just kind of, just give a little, like, but usually we'll walk and then she'll stop and then she'll stop with me. If I want her to sit, I kind of just give her like a little tug and then she sits.
Gotcha.
So, and then she usually sits until she smells something of higher value than me, and then, or we keep going.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about, is all that stuff, and I don't care what's going on. I don't care if there's a prey dog walking by, I don't care if there's a scent of another dog coming by, I don't care if it's a high prey drive dog that sees a squirrel, like they're glued to your hip, okay? So there's no food involved, we want very little leash tension. This is all by default. Okay, so we do use the pulling up, of course, to get the dog to sit, but at some point it's an automatic response. We don't always reinforce it, because then it's a permanent thing. You're always having to pull up.
Yeah, and she's usually pretty good about it. Like, but me, I don't know. She understands. Like, well, obviously she doesn't understand. She doesn't do it all the time.
Well, I was gonna say, like, she knows the skills. I'm not saying that she doesn't. They don't mean enough to her for her to do them no matter what. And that's where we're falling short. Okay. So to address the reactivity, that's the first thing we would cover, is reteach the heel. Using e-collar, shaping it from beginning to end through pressure, except pressure does go away, okay, in the style that I teach. The problem that we may have is if her reactivity is up there, is shutting it down, okay? So theoretically, if she's really locked onto you, she's not gonna care about the dog, okay? Does that always work? No, but it works 60 to 70% of the time. So that's why we always do heel first, and then we go, what does heel fix? And then when you come back on week 2, I ask you some questions, give me a rundown of the week. How many dogs did you see? How often was she reactive? Were you able to shut it down? Is it better, right? And then
her calming down time is usually like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, it's gonna calm down really quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Her usually sees dogs, she'll freak out, and she does like the whole like, she'll jump up, not up in the air, she'll jump up and she's like on her hind legs and like barking, and then like, the only thing that like really concerns me is like sometimes she'll like back and like, it's almost like she's trying to trip me, and she'll just hit the back of your legs kind of, and then she'll go forward and backwards, so she kind of like moves around me while she's freaking out. Yeah, I call it fishing because it reminds me of like when you catch a fish and kind of like she's flailing. That's just what she does.
Gotcha.
And it's really sad, but it's just.
Yeah, it sounds like she's getting overloaded or she's panicking, so she doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't think it's full panic. She's just constantly just freaked out.
Yeah. So what we need to do there is, one, once we teach the formal heel, I want to see what does it fix by itself. And that, because it's not always, like, people think that I come out looking for dogs and then we just remote them from being bad. We don't do that. We teach them what we need them to do first, what does that fix, and then come in and do other stuff, okay? So let's say you get a lot of progress by class 2, and you're like, man, Jesse, this is so much better. And I go, great, what are we struggling with? Okay, that's normal. Here's the second half of heel, because it's a two lesson class or behavior. Here are some tweaks we're gonna make on how we use the collar. I'll see you in a week. You come back week 3, Jesse, it was better. Jesse, it's the same, okay? And then depending on what's happening, changes the approach. Almost always it just comes down to the number. How much pressure are we putting her under, okay? So for her, in the dog world, if she did something that another dog disagreed with, like let's say your neighbor's dog, that whole nose to nose thing to the fence, and the dog was like, hey, don't put your nose here, boom. They use physicality to teach a boundary of don't get near the fence.
And she's usually pretty, so she has, we call her friends. So on our other side, our neighbor has a, I call him a super senior. He's a 13-year-old Siberian Husky, and he's massive, and he can't really walk and stuff. And he's constantly like chasing her, even though he can't walk. But she's very good about like when she is playing with other dogs, she definitely like keeps her boundaries. She's not very like physical like when she's with other dogs. She's kind of like, you chase me, I chase you, and then we're kind of like our own space. So she does that with our neighbor's dog, and then my brother's girlfriend's dog, he's like 4 times her size, and he's like a very tall Irish setter, and then they're just kind of like, they can be in each other's spaces. And then we also have a friend who has a puppy, and she basically just blatantly ignores him. Like she could care less like that he's in the room, that he's like, and she doesn't like care if he like jumps on her and stuff, which is just, it's kind of weird, like her reactions to stuff, because you would think she would be kind of like aggressive towards other dogs, but it's just, she could care less about them. I don't know if it's because they're old men or just because like, but she's also never met a female dog, so I don't know if it's just, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables in play, but when it comes to dogs in the street, she doesn't see the world that like you do. You know, when you walk your dog and you see another dog without their owner, your assumption is that's another person walking their dog. For dogs, that have reactivity, it's like gangs. You know, this is my territory, that's your territory, right? And they're like barking, whatever. Sometimes it can be a dog throwing a tantrum because they want to play. Like reactivity doesn't always mean aggression. But that's like not uncommon. That
Hers used to be, I want to play, now it's just murder.
Sure.
She wants bloodshed.
Right.
She like wants to make the problem go away and then she could care less after.
Right. So with the healing exercise, that kind of determines how things go forward. Because I always prioritize what you're wanting and needing. So obviously you pretty much said it. I need to get reactivity under control. It sounds like maybe controlling territorial behavior, not eliminating it, just being able to control it. Recall, and then of course the heal, right? So the heal actually helps address the reactivity. So that's technically two things that we're addressing at once. If that is going smoothly, like I hope it does, we just keep teaching more stuff. If for whatever reason we're struggling with reactivity, almost always it's the owner not going high enough in the collar, okay? So e-collar can do two things. It can teach something, and it can teach the dog not to do something, okay? So teaching her to go to place to place to place is teaching a skill. But then, like if she becomes reactive, it can also teach her don't do that because it's a consequence, okay? So we always layer in the pressure first so the dog understands what it is, how it turns on, how it turns off. And then from there, we see what does discipline by itself fix, because it's not the heel that fixes the reactivity. It's the consequence behind heel.
The corrections. And we thought that's what kind of like, because she did really good like when we introduced the prong collar. I guess the prong collar just didn't turn into enough. Or I don't know if our timing is just bad when it comes to...
Don't worry about timing.
No.
I know I just made a video about this the other day about timing, and it's not as big of a problem as people think it is, okay? The prong collar, yes, what can happen is, even if you give a very firm correction on the prong collar, if she's on the 20 and you can only do a 10, you're never going to match 20, so it's not going to go anywhere, okay? And I've had plenty of clients come in with their dogs on prong collars and their dog just bypasses the prong because it's not as much of an aversive as needed, okay? E-collar, especially if you have the appropriate e-collar, can override the dog, okay? It's just a matter of, are you willing to go high enough to override the dog, okay? So here, unfortunately, sit collar is garbage.
Yeah.
It only goes to 7, as you noted. I think there's low, medium, high, or something like that, so there's technically 21 levels.
Yeah, and then, so I have a dog care, I think it's dog care, and that's the one I originally bought, and that goes from 0 to 100.
Okay.
So that's the kind of like the one I had, and then they told me that one was trash, and so I was like, okay. They're like, oh, it's only like, I understand like, you know, pricing. It was like a $60 collar, so it wasn't like too bad. But they were like, oh no, it's trash, and I was like, oh, okay.
Well, I'm sorry, I agree with them there. It is trash.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that.
Because of how it comes across. Okay. So a good quality or how do you say professional quality e-collar. So like the sit collar is a good quality stim. Okay. It's just the design and the output of the collar is garbage. So a client that I just saw last night, they just had their second class, dog reactivity, 90-pound dog, trained with sit, dog is still reactive, and I told them because the collar they have, 1 is garbage, but 2 is meant for a 35-pound dog and under. So they upgraded to a collar that I recommended to them.
All of their collars? Because they only gave me the one generalized collar that they have.
Yeah. No, the one collar that sit has is meant for 35 pounds and under. Okay? I know they don't, I get it.
She's 55 pounds.
Yes. This dog is 90 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay? It's because it's sales. Okay? So they switched to a collar I recommended to them, and then lo and behold, all of a sudden we're making a lot of progress. Okay? So they only had 2 classes, and the lady was like, my anxiety has gone down so much because I actually have control over my dog. I'm like, yes, because now you have the correct tool. So here, the collars that we use go to 127.
Why are you shaking? See, now, like, her anxiety, because now she's shaking.
It can also be because it's a
Whatever
little
she
chilly
hears.
here. Yeah. It also because it's a little chilly. There's a little draft that comes from the window here. So the collar that we use goes to 127. So I like the fact that your collar goes to 100. But I felt one of those collars before, and the owner had it on 4, and I was like, well, let me try it out, because If it goes to 100, that's a lot of leeway. And on 4, my hand kind of went like this, and for 15 minutes, my hand had a weird sensation, right? And I was like, yeah, definitely not using that collar, because if that's 4, I know what 100 is, okay?
Yeah.
So ours, 127 is the max power, so we have 27 more intervals than the 100, but the output is the same. But really, it's how the sensation comes across. Okay, so it's not a shock, it's not electricity, it's not a current running through your dog's body, it's just a centralized current.
The stem.
The stem, correct, right? So professional level collars, there's only 2 brands that I work with. The one that I work with myself is Dogtra. Every now and then I get a client that comes in with the e-collar technology or an educator, which is also a very good brand.
Educator.
Yeah, but I stopped using those because it made my behavior cases worse. Okay, so 10 years ago I stopped using that collar because of that problem. But every now and then someone comes in with it, and I'll say, well, it's a good collar, and your dog doesn't have any behavioral issues, so we'll try it out. The last client I had the educator, and her dog took off after a rabbit, and it wasn't enough power to override because it was meant for a smaller, it was meant for a 35-pound dog. She has a 50-pound dog. So that's where these size of the dog, they're already physical animals as it is. Plus, if we're dealing with reactivity, there's all these factors that come into play, and I have to think like, okay, if I'm going to override all these factors, I'm going to need enough output. Okay. So for your particular case, if all you're caring about is reactivity, the heel, the recall, and then the people coming over, you're like in the 6 to maybe 9 class range. Okay. Heel is 2 classes. We see what does that fix. Potentially a 3rd class on reactivity. If that's going well, then 2 classes on recall. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6th class could be someone coming over, okay, and then showing you how to address door reactivity is what we call that. And then we set you up now with don't think at the end of 6 classes, her recall is going to be phenomenal. You're going to have all the information, and then it's practice to get it there. Okay, so heel is the fastest thing that people teach because you walk your dog multiple times a day. Recall tends to be the longest because it requires people to go somewhere to train their dog, right?
And we have, so I have like the 50-yard line, and we use that because we don't, so we had planned to getting our backyard fenced off, and then because of the snow, and then there's a huge shortage on lumber, I guess, in the Chicagoland area. Like, no one has wood anywhere. So that got put off. So we have her on like a line in our backyard, so she has like full access to everything, except she's just leashed. But then we also we go out and about, I'll put her on the line, and then we'll go out and play catch and stuff. But that's she's usually really, really good with that until the distractions come into play. And then it's just kind of then she's over it. And then she's then she starts freaking out. And then she's like.
So an appropriate powered collar and everything would give you control in those situations. Ideally, we're not wanting to see reactivity anymore, right? But life isn't perfect. What happens is the level of reactivity goes down. Ideally, we don't see it anymore. But let's say a year goes by and you turn a corner and there's a dog and she barks. Well, she was caught off guard, right? But one reactive moment in the year is really good. So
that's also really funny. She hears dogs barking. She don't care. We'll be out on a walk, and we'll walk next to. She only cares if we're walking next to a fence, because then she thinks the dog's right on the other side of the fence. But if we're in the middle of the street, she hears a dog bark, she could care less. As long as if she can't be by a fence and she doesn't see it, she could care less. She can't see it and smell it. That's her triggers. But if she hears a dog barking, she does not care.
Gotcha.
Which is kind of weird, because you would think all aspects of the animal.
Every dog has their own kind of individual quirks. They're kind of like people. Right? So it's not common, but it's not uncommon, that she cares about this stuff, but not, not the barking. So in regards to the length of time control, length of time and cost and stuff, you're in the 6 to 9 weekish range. 6 is if you did 6, it's kind of like bare bones. I target what I know you're needing. Obviously, you're going to focus on the leash walking and the heel. As long as you're following the instructions, everything should be pretty straightforward. I will say, and I have a pity myself, I love pitties, I've worked with plenty throughout the years. is a dog reactive pity is very different than a dog reactive German Shepherd.
Yes.
Okay, so it's super rare, but it happens. Every year I maybe get a handful of dog or reactive cases where they don't retain the information. So what that means is they start lunging and barking, we can stop it, and then 3 seconds later they see another dog, boom, they blow up. Whereas any other dog, we stop it and then they're good, right? And then maybe a week goes by and then they try again, and then we stop it, and then 2 weeks go, like it's just gradual progression. Every now and then there's a dog that just, it doesn't sink in, they just keep blowing up every time they see a dog. Now the owner can of course stop it, it's just the dog doesn't retain it, okay? So it's really rare, it does happen, and almost always when it does happen, it's usually some kind of bully or pit breed. You know, bull terrier, pit bull, bulldog, anything like that. I can only take you as far as you're willing to go. So like, let's say with the obedience stuff, her number is 25, she's great, she's perfect, she's on the hip, her walks are awesome, but then when she's reactive, you know, maybe I come to the conclusion, like, try 85, see if she stops, whatever, and then you come back and like, how'd it go? And like, Jesse, it was terrible. And they go, well, how high did you go? 35. Well, 35 isn't 85, right? Unless we go to 85, we're not gonna know if it's actually gonna stop her. But there's a method to the madness. I don't just say go to 100 and zap your dog when she becomes reactive. First, you got to find the working level, find the baseline, what's going to be concerning to her, and if you're outside and she becomes reactive and you remote her at 50 and you can see her twitching and 50 does nothing, then we know 50 didn't work. Now we go to 60 or 55 to 60 to 65 to 70. We just keep going up. So eventually we find the breaking point. Okay, and that's where people struggle, because they feel bad. And I go, well, if 50 worked, we would have used 50, but the dog is still being reactive. So common sense says it's not working. Yeah. We got to keep escalating. Every dog has a breaking point. We just have to find what it is. The next thing would be you have to start exposing yourself in terms of like actually walking her, where there's dogs out and stuff like that, because a lot of people in their dogs become reactive.
We did a lot of that, except when she got reactive, we kind of cut back on.
Yeah, and that's what happens.
Like places and.
Yeah, which is fine because you technically don't have the tools or the skills yet, right? But once we get the tools and the skills, now it's like, now you have to go back out. Because keeping her withdrawn doesn't help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we like being outside. Like both me, my dad, and my brother, we go on walks constantly. And it used to be we would bring her like every single time, and then it was just kind of. Now it's cut back quite a bit because like she's too much for, especially my dad, like because we can't have him falling over and stuff. But like my brother kind of just like carries her, and then we like going on trails and stuff. So we take her on trails, and then instead of like, so when she reacts really badly, I just pick her up and we just keep going, and then I put her down, and then she goes. So that's kind of like how we've been dealing with it, like going on trails and stuff. Because trails is just like you have the sidewalk and that's what you can't, like you have to stay on. So it's not like, I can't just like, go off into the woods somewhere and then like possibly find my way back. Because like she's just like, as long as she sees the dog, it's kind of like game over. So it's just kind of like, I've just gotten used to like picking her up if we can't like, walk a different direction. So it's just, that's kind of.
Yeah, no, we want to.
Probably also hindering.
Yeah, but I mean, unfortunately, you don't have a reliable means anyway, so it's like, does it help? No, but does it hurt? No. So, any other questions?
I don't know, as of right now.
Okay. The last thing I would kind of leave you with is that one of the most common questions we get is, when does the e-collar go away? And in my book, when you need it, it doesn't. So that means whenever you walk her, she has her collar on. If you're gonna have guests come over that she's not familiar with, she has her collar on. If she's a great dog otherwise, you don't need it. So it's only really when you're gonna be out walking her, simply because you can't account for life and all the different stimuli that are gonna be out there. Do you drive? Do you go to the expressway?
Yes.
Do you go to the speed limit?
Yes.
Okay, so you're a rule follower. Most people don't go to the speed limit.
Well, I don't drive the speed limit. I know what the speed limit is.
Oh, okay. So, yeah.
Well, no, if I have other people in the car, I'll go the speed limit, but when I drive by myself, I don't do speed limits.
Most people don't do the speed limit, right? So it's called opportunistic behavior. If you can get away with something, you'll try it, Same thing with dogs. So she's got the collar on. So the collar's a cap on the collar. She'll be more well behaved. But when she has it off, not so well behaved. Okay. So it's nothing to do with my methods or anything to do with like my skills as a trainer. Humans do it, so dogs are going to do it as well. Okay.
She doesn't necessarily try to push limits.
Well,
it's like just outside. It's
right.
Like,
so what I mean by limits is like, let's say when you walk her, she sees the dog, collar on, not reactive. Collar off, reactive. Okay. Is without having any means of consequence, you're going to most likely see the reactivity and all that stuff. Right. This is part of it. It's just how it is. So Maria will reach out. She'll get in contact with you. She'll give you a breakdown of the pricing and everything. At bare minimum, 6. 2 on the heel. What does that fix? If reactivity is still a struggle, another class on reactivity. And I keep working on it until we figure out the solution. Okay. Reactivity is typically gone by that 6th to 3rd class. If it's not gone, it's because the owner is not doing something, or it happens to be that very rare case. Okay. Because again, I'm like, okay, if 50 is not working, we gotta go higher, And the owner goes, but I feel bad. And I go, we're not gonna get anywhere if you feel bad, which is why I do this, right?
That'll probably be me for a couple of days, and then.
Yeah. So that's why I do this consultation.
Yeah.
And I tell them, like, look, if you're not willing to go there, there's not even a point in doing it because you're just wasting your time and money. I will get the result. I'll give you the information to get the result. But unless you follow through with it, she's not going to care. So obviously we're not trying to hurt dogs or anything like that. If I was, I would think I wouldn't be here. And there's a logic to it. Once you understand the logic, it's just very much common sense. And I give you very easy to understand and replicate directions that you can just start applying to real life. Okay, that's what we train for. Now, a concern might be, well, if we're working here in the facility, how does it translate outside, right? It just comes down to power. If 25, she is great here, and in the neighborhood 25, she's not listening, tells me we need more power. 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, all of a sudden, she's perfect again. She needs 50 when she's outside in the home setting, right? So once you understand this simple concept, it's really just finding the necessary power to override her personal agenda. Whether it's like she catches a scent and she wants to sniff, now we have a tool that can disrupt that behavior and tell her like that's not allowed anymore. Okay? Any other questions?
No. I mean, now she's calm. She was freaking out earlier. Penny, do you have any questions? Also, do you guys do, I know you do daycare, but do you do like day and trains? Like
daycare and trains?
Yeah, like if I bring her like 1 day a week to like, can you guys kind of like hang out with her?
Yeah, so we do daycare and trains. The way those are done are 5, 10, 15, and 20 day bundles. And before you have your first class, she would have to have come in 5 times.
Oh, okay.
And then you can schedule a class, right? Because we need enough time to teach the skills, practice the skills. And that's done a little bit differently. Typically what we do is once you bring her in, we teach everything. There's 6 commands: sit, stay down, come, place, heel. We teach all those commands, we film it, we explain it, we make a video, we send it to you. And once you get your video, you can start practicing and learning what she's been taught. So then after she's been here 5 times, then you can schedule a follow-up. So you have the video, you can start working on your own, and then when you come in for your follow-up, you're coming in with practice, you're coming in with the video, the knowledge, and I'm just helping you kind of close the gap in what maybe didn't translate well. When it comes to stuff like this, my advice is that you do in person and you train yourself because you're going to get a lot more.
My main concern is I just want her to be like socialized and kind of like so she understands kind of like how to be around other dogs.
So socialization wouldn't help the reactivity, just so you know. Those are 2 different things. Now, can I teach you how to socialize her? Yes. Okay. The way for me socializing is going to a dog park is not. I don't go to dog parks with my dogs.
I think they're a cesspool for.
Yeah, it's just too much craziness there. But like if you have a friend who had got a new dog or something, like I have a very structured way of introducing dogs, and once you understand the structure, it's really just replicate it. Okay. Let me check. And the client is coming back to you. So, Maria will get in contact. Hey, DJ, has anyone called yet? So we got a client coming. You just were on the floor. We're gonna get in contact with you. But yeah, but for something like this is something that you want to do yourself because you're gonna learn a lot more.
Yeah.
Okay, whenever I
definitely want to train her myself.
Yeah. You'll learn so much more, and it takes longer, but life isn't, how do you say, black and white. So when I work with you, I teach you how to handle all the crap that you might come across.
Yeah, because I want to know how to take care of her during stressful situations.
Right. Okay.
You're fine.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.